was wholly inspirational. Yes, we heard from people with expertise on the ground, from scientists, from people who've been involved in this issue for some time. But I think what was particularly heartening for me were the numbers of members of the public who came along and asked questions and were really interested and actually fairly appalled to learn what's happening on such a huge part of Scotland's land. If we all left here and told one more person about what we'd heard, about some of the footage we'd seen, about what we've learned, I think that would be the beginning of spreading the message, because once the majority of people in Scotland understand what's going on in their land, they will be appalled, they will demand change. This isn't an equitable, humane way to be managing land, not in any way, shape or form.
Well, I think today has started to address some of the questions that have worried me for a long time. I've always come at this from the animal welfare point of view, being very aware that every animal that's trapped, snared, shot on a grouse moor is a sentient individual. It can suffer, it can experience emotions, and I've always been very concerned that we don't have the right to inflict that sort of suffering, particularly in the name of sport. So I'm glad that the animal welfare angle has been addressed. And what I think is important is that Revive is bringing together different strands: animal welfare, conservation, raptor persecution, social justice. We're all going to work together. We're not going to be split apart by people who just call us the antis. We know what we're against, but we're now going to build something positive going forward. That's a very strong position. And so what I'm finding already is that the people in this room are working towards that.
So I'm here today. I work at Argotay Red Kites, which is involved in the conservation of red kites in central Scotland. So obviously raptor persecution is something which comes up a lot during talks in the hides, in the afternoon feeding sessions at Argotay. So yeah, it's a really important issue for me, not just from that perspective, but also as just someone who loves being out in the countryside, in the outdoors, out hill walking. You know, I see these issues quite often, and I want to be part of, you know, a movement that does something about it, hopefully. So yeah, that's why I'm interested.
I think a lot of the Scottish Highlands, not just the grouse moors but the valleys, need a huge amount of reform, partly for the economy, partly for flood protection, carbon sequestration. We've got climate extreme ahead, and I think the majority of people with the money, the landowners and the parliamentarians, are not looking to quick immediate solutions to those problems. And I think we need to be reforming the law around land ownership and how we manage the land for the better of our future generations.
I came to speak about the need to act for wildlife and the environment, and also about young people. I think Revive is a really inspiring coalition. It's really hopeful about that we could change the way our grouse moors work to protect wildlife and for the benefit of people as well.
Well, I've got an interest in wildlife crime, and part of this conference is about wildlife crime. I've been involved in the investigation of wildlife crime for 50 years now. So I thought this would be a great conference to come to. Through my dealings with driven grouse moors, I now have a complete dislike of what happens in driven grouse moors, and this conference is partly about how we can maybe change the look of our uplands in Scotland to make them far better for the public and far more worthwhile. Well, I think it's great to see so many people that I don't know here. Most of the conferences I go to, I know most of the people in the audience, but there's so many people here that have virtually come in off the street to learn about the difficulties on driven grouse moors and our uplands. So it's good to see that the information is getting out to people that all is not well, and they're taking an interest in it.
So I came here today not only as a concerned citizen, but also as a new business owner, and with the idea to learn about what is happening with grouse moors and the reform and the changes that can be made. Not only because I care about animal welfare, but there's so much opportunity that at the moment is is unavailable to new business owners like myself because all this land is used for what it's used for. So yeah, as the owner of the Adventure Photographers, who we really care about the environment, and so we want to celebrate it by going out and capturing. At the moment, we're capturing people having adventures in nature, and we want to put all of our profits to tree planting initiatives. So we are very kind of a sustainably thinking new business, and there's all this opportunity that at the moment we can't use or work on because it's owned by Grousemoor management, Grousemoor landowners.
Well, I came to represent Scottish Wild Beaver Group, but also more broadly I'm just very interested in the revival of Scottish land and land use. It's been fascinating. I particularly enjoyed Richard Dixon just now talking about peat and in relation to climate change and in relation to the burning of moors, and it's just abundantly clear that we need to reconsider land use pretty much on every level.
I'm Claudia Beamish, and I'm Scottish Labour's Shadow Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Land Reform, and I came here today partly because Max asked me, and I chaired something at the Scottish Labour Conference, a fringe for Revive, and was really inspired by the coalition looking at sustainable development for the future and what is in the public interest for the reform of our grouse moors. And so today I chaired the meeting on environment, and it all fits in to sustainable development, and I have learnt so much about raptor persecution, about the threats that are made to people who live locally, which I was horrified by in the 21st century, and I'm looking forward to going back to the last session to actually hear about what possibilities there are, not only for reform but for alternative ways of going forward for biodiversity, for our local communities in our rural areas of Scotland where there are driven grouse moors, and how we can all work together to make a better future.